Welcome everyone. Thanks for being here for Intro to Generative AI for Project Communications. I have a poll that I'm going to launch out to all of you. I'm curious if you're able to answer the poll and let me know how much have you experimented with generative AI? Have you used ChatGPT or any of those type of tools? As those answers are coming in, we'll go ahead and get into the slides here. In case you're brand new to generative AI, looks like some of you are saying not at all. So for those of you that this is brand new, generative AI, well, what is it? And to answer that question, let's go ahead and use a generative AI tool, Bing Chat. So if you have the Edge browser, you have Bing Chat. You see this icon in the upper right-hand side of the sidebar. That is your Bing Chat, aka Copilot, as it's sometimes called. That is a chat tool that you can use to ask any question. And I asked it, what is generative AI? Generative AI is artificial intelligence capable of generating text, images, or other media, including or using generative models. So the big thing here is that they accept natural language prompts as inputs, meaning you can chat with them like you would chat with a human, and they will come up with answers via text, sometimes images, and there's all different types of generative AI. And let's look at the different types of generative AI, some of them anyway. Text to image, you typed in a text prompt, you get back an image. Examples are Midjourney, Stable Diffusion. Text to video, type in a voiceover script, and you can get back a video of either an avatar with your voiceover, speaking your voiceover, like Synthesia does that. Runway is more text description of the type of scenery you want to see, and it will come up with a video output matching your text prompt. There's text to audio, which is when you also need some type of voiceover or podcast or audio file and you want it to speak your text. You input that and it outputs AI voice. Text to text, that's the one we're probably hearing the most about with ChatGPT. Before that, we heard about Grammarly, and some of us use tools like Jasper, Writer to help us with spelling and writing. Now they're much more advanced. We have Claude, Perplexity, of course, ChatGPT 4. We'll be talking mostly about the text-to-text tools in this presentation. And then finally, I have audio to text, which is mostly for transcription. Tools like Otter AI will do that. They will listen in on your meetings, or you can give it a video recording and it will transcribe it for you. You may have noticed Zoom has this feature now where if you turn on the AI feature, it will start to automatically do transcriptions of your meetings. Some of them will go so far as to create meeting notes and tally up action items and do all kinds of things. So those are just some of the generative AI types, and we'll be talking more in detail about those on this presentation. So the results of the poll looks like 37% of you have not used generative AI at all. 56 said a little bit, and 7% are experimenting regularly. So great, you're in the right place. This is an introductory webinar, and hopefully all of this will make sense as we're approaching it from pretty much from a beginner level. Some of our webinars down the road are going to go into more advanced levels of prompt engineering, but hopefully you'll feel right at home and take something away from this webinar today. Oops, what have I done? Okay, let me go back to where I was. Okay. So Midjourney, let's talk about Midjourney for a second. This is one of the best image generating tools out there right now in terms of the quality of the output. And I just want to walk you through the history, the most recent history of Midjourney. It launched February 2022. You can see V1, the quality of the image it was able to generate there. V2, a little bit better. Over the months that followed, it gradually got better, but even just as of May 2023 with version 5.1, you can see a dramatic improvement in the quality of that image, even seeing the water droplets. Right now, it's 5.2 that most people are working with, and even there's I think an alpha version of 6 out there. Some of the expert designers are starting to share their outputs from the tool. Midjourney is a little bit more of an advanced a little more of a learning curve for the prompting there, but it is one of the best in terms of the realistic photographic-like outputs that it generates. And we'll talk about some of the other options, but I just wanted to show this slide just so you can see how quickly this is moving, how fast it's improving, and really why it's important to be paying attention because of the rapid pace. So here's 5 of the ways that generative AI can help you improve your communication. I've kind of made these 5 buckets that I'm going to be talking about today on this webinar. 1 is visuals and layout. 2, clarity and conciseness of your written content. 3, finding good citations. 4, coming up with creative touches. And 5, getting instant feedback. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm going to start with this one slide that I wanted to share. This is a text-to-text tool overview, but as you can see, this slide needs some help. It's probably hard for most of you to see it well. So let's ask ChatGPT for some help with this. I pasted this exact image into ChatGPT 4, which is the paid version of ChatGPT. And I asked it, I said I wanted to use it in a slide deck, but it's hard to read. What are some of your suggestions? And it gave me this long list, which it was far more than 9 suggestions, like it's cut off, of all the ways that I could make this a better slide. And so I took some of the advice, including number 7, which I highlighted there with the blue arrow. It suggested I use one of the data points in a bar chart instead. So it'll actually give you suggestions for the best type of visualization for the type of data that you have. So it had a number of other recommendations, some of them common sense things about, only including the most essential information, get rid of what's not absolutely necessary. So I got rid of a few of the models like Grok, which doesn't have a really great use case for us right now as of this date and this point in time. So I got rid of the models I didn't think would be as relevant to this crowd. And then I reformatted using some of the suggestions that it gave me, and I came up with a much easier to read slide. So let's just go through this table really quickly. These are some of the text-to-text models to pay attention to. ChatGPT 4 is up at the top. It's the most powerful and robust model out there, pretty much. Its strengths include reasoning, writing, creative tasks, image generation, coding. This again is talking about the paid version, the $20 a month version. Some of the weaknesses is it can be slow depending on how many people are on there at the same time. You have to be a little bit more careful with your prompting. Its last update was April 2023. So one of the columns to pay attention to in this chart is the secure column, whether or not it's secure. A lot of these are not secure. ChatGPT 4 is not unless you're using enterprise. And so just know not to put any proprietary data into any of these tools. And, just keep that in mind. Claude is from Anthropic. This one is really great for if you're trying to understand long documents. You can upload much longer form content to be able to query the content of. It is really easy to use and it is secure. So there's a free version and a $20 a month version of Claude. Bard, or most recently Gemini Pro, is what is powering Bard as of the last few weeks or a month when they launched Gemini from Google. It's another large language model similar to ChatGPT. It's good at internet tasks, image tasks, and the big thing here is it's integrated with Google. So you can use it in Google Sheets. You'll find it right there inside of your Google tools. It is also not secure, but it is free, so something to play around with. And then Bing Chat, which I demonstrated at the beginning, that's part of your Edge browser. It uses GPT-4 for one of the modes. One of the things that's confusing about Bing Chat is that there's 3 different modes. And so the creative mode uses ChatGPT-4, and creative meaning that it might not necessarily be accurate information. You've probably heard about these models doing what they call hallucinations, Generative AI is pretty much always hallucinating. Whether or not the hallucinations are factual or not is the question. So when they say it's hallucinating, usually that people mean that it's not factual information that it's giving you back. But really every output is a hallucination, because that's how these models work. They're predicting what word to put next in the output. So it's all generative, it's all creative, it's all a hallucination, so to speak. But you have to be careful and just know that it can sound very confident with a response that may not actually be an accurate factual response. It is connected to the internet, meaning that the training data doesn't stop at a point. Some of the models, like we talked about, GPT-4 stops at April 2023 training data, but the models like being fast, so it can actually use real-time data pulling from the internet. And you'll see that when you start to query it with certain things, it'll start searching the internet and come back and incorporate those things that it found in its response. Again, not secure unless you or your organization is paying for enterprise. And last one I have here is Perplexity, which is one of my favorites because it actually will give citations. So if you're trying to write an article, let's say, and you need scientific studies or sources of references of where the information is coming from, it's much more reliable in that it will source where it's getting the information. It will give you a link so that you can click and then go to that article or study or media website or wherever it found it, so that you can verify that it's accurate information. So that one's a really good tool, especially if you're doing any kind of article writing or you need that type of citation and reference at, on your work. And there's a free version of that and a $20 a month version. The $20 a month version lets you choose between if you want to use ChatGPT-4 or Claude. So it kind of gives you both of those options, but it's not going to be as robust as if you were to have a ChatGPT-4 subscription. ChatGPT-4 can do coding. It can do image generation using DALL-E 3, which is part of ChatGPT-4 now. So that's why most people would say that ChatGPT-4 is the most robust large language model. So if we go back to that, when I was asking ChatGPT-4 to help me with that slide, and I said it mentioned that I should use a bar chart for the token data visualization that I had in the chart. So one of the columns I had in my chart was about tokens. Token means word count, basically. It's approximating one token equals about one word. So these models can accept inputs of a certain number of words or a certain amount of data, which is, they call it tokens. And the models are different in how much they can accept when you prompt it. And you can really tell when we put it, I'll say it's ChatGPT created this bar chart. It was its idea to make a bar chart. So I said, okay, well, I prompted it to create the bar chart and I gave it the data. I listed it. You can see my prompt there where I just typed it out, conversation style. It wasn't like I gave it an Excel file. I just said ChatGPT-4 32K, Claude free version 100K, etc. I said how many tokens each model can accept, and then it spit back out this image for me to use for my slide, which really does show you how the Claude paid version is far and away can accept the most data. So you can actually upload a whole book into Claude. Both the free and the paid version can accept a lot more data than some of the other models. So that's a much nicer way to communicate that information. Another thing you can do with ChatGPT-4 is add your branding if you're doing company communications. And this is just a screenshot from when I had uploaded a couple logo files. I screenshotted the color palette that we were using. So if you have a brand kit or even in Canva, some companies use Canva and you program in your hex codes for your company colors. I just screenshotted that and pasted it right into ChatGPT-4. And I said, here's our branding, I listed the font. And that was part of a project I was working on, a slide deck where I wanted to really brand it with the soft ed colors. And it was able to use that screenshot take note of all the hex codes and start to give me images that only used those colors, which was neat. So like I said, you can create custom images with ChatGPT-4 and some of the other tools as well. This is an example of how you might do that. You would type in, create an image for, and then you describe what type of image you need. I put PowerPoint slide background consisting of an illustration of a humanoid robot painting on a digital canvas to represent the creativity of generative AI. And actually, I didn't even come up with that idea myself. Before this prompt, I asked ChatGPT to help me think of good prompts for images for themes that matched my presentation. So I asked it, I uploaded the outline of my presentation to ChatGPT and I said, what are some ideas for what would be some good images to go along with this? And then once it gave me some prompt ideas, I took the ones I like and I used those as prompts, and then it came back with this image. And so you can do that, and you can also start tweaking the images if it doesn't hit the mark. You can always say, that's great, now make it a little more of whatever you need. And real easy way to do that is to just say more creative or more whatever it is. You can go over and over again and say, well, okay, now make it even more creative, and it'll come back with a whole different idea, or whatever the adjective is that you need to really depict what you're trying to depict. So ChatGPT-4 is really user-friendly. It's not like Midjourney where you have to spend a little bit time learning the prompt engineering. And the nice thing too about this is that it came back with the right aspect ratio for a slide. So because I said PowerPoint, it's giving me a nice rectangular image that would fit nicely on a slide. And it would do the same thing if I said, make it a square or make it good for a social post. It would do the same thing. And again, I tried to put the color palette for Soft Ed's branding in there, and I said, now make the robot in the painting use this color palette, and you can see it put the blues and yellows in there. So you can really create some impactful images, and this is helpful if your project involves situations where it's really difficult to get good quality photos. It can be really expensive to orchestrate photo shoots. So you can really start to be very specific in the types of images that you include in your communications. You might need to show product impact in certain scenarios. You might want to show certain demographics of users. And so you'll start to see that really anything is possible in terms of the types of images. Here's an example of a product impact shot. I asked it to generate a photo of an individual using a fitness app outdoors, showcasing real-time health stats and appearing motivated and energetic. So you can see it captured the motivated and energetic, didn't really give me the real-time health stats. One thing about these image generating tools, they're not really good at text overlays and typography. If you try to make it do those things, you'll see a lot of typos and a lot of weird not real words and things like that. So I would stay away from trying to ask it to include text in the images for now. And of course, things improve over time. Maybe in a month from now, it'll be better. But for now, it does require knowing Photoshop. If you need certain text overlays, there's still very much a need for graphic design work. But as you can tell, this is pretty close to what I was asking for and pretty photorealistic as well. There's another very photorealistic image generated by Midjourney. And this slide is just talking about some of the tools that I use. We talked about most of these already. Claude, we talked about Claude. Gloss AI is one I hadn't mentioned. This is good if you have long form video that you need to condense down into snippets of 1 minute or so for a social media post, or for whatever reason you need a shorter form content. I use Gloss AI for that, just uploading webinars or live streams and then getting snippets that's good for sharing just the short clips. Bing Chat is one that's really easy to use. I mentioned it's part of the Edge browser, And especially if you're using PowerPoint and you use the browser version of PowerPoint in your Edge browser, it's really simple to just create an image right there, open up the sidebar, ask Bing Chat, tell it what type of image you want. And that's what I did. I said, generate an image showing a blank New Year calendar planner ready to be filled in at a coffee shop. And it gave me 4 different options. This was one of them. And then I could just drag and drop it right into my PowerPoint. And that took me a few seconds. So Claude AI is one we talked about. This one's really good for summarizations. So that can be useful in 2 ways. One, if you need to read a really long document, or you need a really short version of a long document so that you can get up to speed on something really quickly, you can upload that document to Claude and ask it to summarize it for you, which I did in this example. I'll show you the output in just a minute. But the other way is that if you're actually the one writing a piece of content, whether that's an article or an email, and you feel like the way that it came out on your first draft could be condensed and made more concise, you can ask these models to summarize it or make sure that it's written in the most concise manner possible, in addition to some of the other editing you might wish for it to do, like grammar, spelling, that type of thing. It really does a good job with that. So this is a prompt I used in Claude. I said, summarize this document. I uploaded one of our PDF documents, the AI-powered business analyst, which is a document that goes along with one of our courses. I just needed to know high level what it was about. So it took over 2,000 lines of text in this document, and it condensed it down into these 5 main points. I was able to read that, get up to speed, and keep going. So that can save you some time. Here's an example of Perplexity. As I mentioned, this is the one to go to if you need specific citations or references for your articles. I was working on the presentation I did for our most recent AI Day back in December, where I was talking about storytelling and how there's scientific evidence showing that when we tell stories, people like physiologically are impacted in certain ways. And I was trying to research and figure out exactly what could I reference to back up my point. And it gave me several different angles on that with links to the National Institute of Health, and Berkeley had an article, and legitimate medical articles. One was talking about oxytocin release. And so you can see that these are actually linking to legitimate sources and can help save you some time when you need to find some references. So another way that generative AI can help is just with adding some creative touches to your communications, or whether it's a presentation or whatever it is that you're working on. You can ask ChatGPT to look for stories that are conveying the point that you're trying to make. Like, for example, I was working on that same presentation and I wanted to talk about AI and ethics, and I was looking for a story that was similar to that, had a similar moral that I wanted to make my point of the story. And it gave me Pinocchio, Frankenstein, and The Sorcerer's Apprentice, which you probably know better as Fantasia. And it even helped me find this illustration from an old version of the story, pre-Fantasia. And so this, you probably know the story. The sorcerer leaves the apprentice in charge, and the apprentice wants the powers of the sorcerer, but he doesn't have all the wisdom to really be able to use the tools. So he starts trying to get the spell book out and get the broom to start doing his chores for him. And we know it just goes to chaos, and he tries to use an axe to hack the broom divides, and then it's just more chaos. And then the sorcerer has to come in and fix everything because the apprentice really didn't know all that he thought he knew in order to be able to manage these tools. So that was a really good segue into talking about ethics of AI, because we all have these tools at our disposal now. and a lot of different things can be done with the tools. Do we have the wisdom to use them in ways that are helpful? We'll talk about some of the ethics towards the end of this presentation, but that was just all that to say that generative AI can give you ideas to make your presentations more interesting, come up with interesting illustrations or photos that you might not thought of using. And these are just some other ways that you might think about using generative AI. One is on your emails. The subject line is the most important piece of copy. So if you're looking for ideas for how to make a subject line interesting, ChatGPT can give you a whole list of engaging subject lines. You can ask it for feedback on your layouts, your images, your screenshots of slides, screenshots of landing pages, whatever it is, especially if you're not very design oriented, like you might know something doesn't look quite right, but you're not sure exactly what to do to fix it. You can put that in there and ask for feedback, and it'll say, well, this looks good, that looks good. You might want to think about adding more white space here, or maybe you forgot a call to action. All those types of feedback, it's really good at methodically going through and checking for those things and catching things that you may have missed. We talked about the summarization, but formatting is another way that these generative AI tools can really help you, making things bold, making things in easy to read, easy to scan forms, taking your copy. Maybe you have a really long chunk of text that's just hard to read because it's a big, long paragraph, and you really want people to be able to easily scan it. You can say, help me format this. You can say, I don't mind if you use emojis, do whatever you need to do to make this look really good. Or maybe you don't like emojis, you can tell that, but you can really prompt all those things. What does your brand need? Does it need a formal tone? Does it use a conversational, casual tone? Does it use emojis or not? You can say all those things, and then it'll take that copy and it will tweak all those things. And it's a lot faster than having to go through line by line and do those things yourself. And then finally, I have here brainstorming titles, brainstorming headlines. Anytime you have something that you have an idea for, you have a draft, but it's not very catchy or doesn't feel very creative, you can ask it, give me 10 ideas for a title for this article. Paste in your article, and then it will give you some ideas. You might not use any of them, but it might spark an idea, or you might find one that you just need to tweak. So the final thing I had on my 5 ways generative AI can help is instant feedback on your public speaking. This is a feature built into PowerPoint now. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but you can actually, after you've finished your deck, if you want to do a practice run, there's a coach now inside of PowerPoint that you can turn your camera on, you can start delivering your talk, and then after it captures some of your talking, it will give you this report with all these stats on how you're speaking, from your pace, your pitch, how monotone are you, are you using eye contact, are you doing good body language, all these different things. So you can play around with that. I found that, it was okay. I thought it was interesting. Sometimes it wasn't quite accurate in terms of the pronunciation, but it was interesting. It's something that might be convenient. We don't always have the luxury of another human being sitting there and listening to us talk and giving us feedback. So something to play around with. So let's do another poll. See if I can launch this second poll here. What is your organization's policy about generative AI? And I'm just going to check the questions while these answers are coming in. Kim says, wouldn't the answer from ChatGPT lean towards ChatGPT, i.e. Bard is hallucinating? Not sure what you mean by that. Maybe you can put in the chat what I mean, they both hallucinate, so I'm not sure what you're asking. And then Kim said, would it be interesting to ask the same question to each model to see if they're consistent? Absolutely. I do this a lot. I'll have Perplexity open, I'll have Claude open, I'll have ChatGPT open, and sometimes I'll get a response that either feels questionable or I just want to verify. So that's a great point, Kim. Thank you. All right, so our poll, I'm going to go ahead and end that and share the results. 25% of you said we do not have a policy. 40% said we have a policy that allows use of generative AI. 13 said we have a policy that bans the use of generative AI, and 25% other or don't know. So probably very much depends on your industry, to what extent the industry is regulated, or to what extent there is a group in your leadership that is concerned about legal issues and maybe more risk averse than others. So that's interesting to know. And let's see. So speaking of all of these ethical concerns, I wrote an article last March called Crafting Content Responsibly in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. You can find that on LinkedIn, and I'll send out these slides afterwards if you're interested in any of these links that I'm including in the slides. But basically, to sum up the concerns that I went through in detail in this article, the first one is deep fakes, which, if you're not familiar with that term, it means a photo or a video that depicts a person, an actual person, doing something that they never actually did. And you can imagine how that could create a lot of problems. Misinformation is something that can be done at a much larger scale than ever before because of these tools, whether it's deliberate or not. And safety, of course, we can imagine how safety can be a concern when all of these tools are available to be used. The next is privacy. We talked about how these tools aren't keeping your data secure. Bias is something that is built into the data that these models are trained on. So the outputs can have bias because they're trained on data that has bias. And if you're interested in these topics, particularly the discrimination that occurs as a result of the use, check out this article. At the bottom of this article, I've got a list of recommended resources that include books. There's a Netflix documentary called Coded Bias that talks about some of the things that happened in the real world when these tools started being released, and some of the ways that those are being controlled and attempted to be, raise awareness around this. And then I have transparency that deals with whether or not the AI model is an open source model, meaning they're transparent. They say this is the way that it was trained, this is the data that it was trained on, etc. Or if it's closed, which the model, we don't know how the model was trained. We don't know the data it was trained on. And ironically, OpenAI or ChatGPT is actually closed, so we don't have any transparency there. So that's something to kind of watch as we move into the future, because we have both models being released and advanced. Finally, I've got copyright and legal. It's still being determined what fair use is in the age of AI. Last month, the New York Times started a lawsuit against OpenAI and Microsoft. So the courts are going to be deciding what is fair use and how we navigate that. It's a big gray area right now. So there's a lot of legal issues, which is why it makes sense that a significant number of you are saying that this is banned in your organization. A lot of organizations are not allowed to use generative AI. And then on my article, I do need to add environmental. So I'm going to be putting out an update to this, but just real quick on the environmental side of things, there's a study from Carnegie Mellon University that was measuring the carbon emissions from these types of models based on what type of task it was doing. And you can see all the way here to the right, the image generation is by far the highest in the carbon emissions, and they say that each AI created image consumes as much energy as it takes to charge your smartphone. So just keeping in mind that using these tools does use resources, including water. UC Riverside came out with a study that says AI consumes large volumes of scarce water. These data processing centers, they need water to cool their systems. They generate power from steam. So all of that is another thing as we see the use of these tools just skyrocketing. I think ChatGPT reached 1 million users faster than any app ever before, including all the social media apps. So we'll continue to see that playing out. For some reason, there we go. This slide is a recommended video if you're interested in some of those ethical issues. Tristan Harris is the director of the Center for Humane Technology. You might remember him from the documentary years back called The Social Dilemma, talking about social media. Well, now he's come out with AI Dilemma. There's a YouTube video that really goes into details about all the things to pay attention to with generative AI as these technologies are steamrolling ahead, and we'll continue to see that in 2024. So there's a link there if you want to learn more. But now I'd love to see if there's any questions in the chat. Let's see. Keisha says the instant feedback function is great. Yep, it's pretty cool. Kimberly says we have an in-house version of AI that we must use due to security concerns. Okay, there are, you can create your own private LLMs or large language models, and companies are looking into doing that so that they can manage the security risk. In fact, we'll have a webinar coming up that goes into detail about creating your own private LLM. I'll give you the date for that in a moment. Michael asked, are there any copyright or trademark concerns? Yes, there are. I would be cautious about copy pasting any text outputs that you get. Let's say you prompt it to write an article. I would be very cautious about just pasting that and putting my name to it. It's not technically yours to claim. You can't get a trademark or a copyright on anything that generative AI created. Even the images, it's recommended that you credit the AI for the image. That's something I've started doing. I'll create images for something like our LinkedIn newsletter, and I'll put image generated by Midjourney or image generated by Bing Chat AI or whatever the AI tool was. I'll put that there just so it's clear. But this is something that we're going to continue to see in the news as this gets hashed out. Jeffrey says, are these considered royalty-free images? Sort of, I would say so. Like, you can use them however you want. Like I said, I would credit them, but you can't like take an AI generated image and then apply for a trademark or a copyright on it. I mean, you could try it, but technically that's not yours to own. What you could do is use it as a starting point and then bring it into Photoshop or Illustrator and significantly modify it. Let's say you bring up the resolution and you make some significant modifications to where it is something you could copyright or trademark. And that's actually reminding me to bring up an interesting point about these AI generated images, which is that they tend to be extremely low resolution. So I would be cautious about using them for any kind of print application because they tend to be very low resolution. And if you blow them up on a print format or even a larger size on a screen, you're going to start to see that they are in fact pretty low res. That's why we'll continue to need graphic designers, particularly for modifying these images so that they actually look very crisp and clean. And, they're a good starting point. They're a good way to enhance your creativity, but then they need further tweaking if you were going to use them somewhere like especially like a billboard or something. That would look terrible. But anything bigger than, I would say, maybe like 3-inch square on a print job, you're going to start to see some degradation of the image. I'm going to keep going back through, see if I missed any other questions. Is it possible that a generative AI image of a person could indeed be extremely similar to a real person? Any protections against that? So there's not really protections against that, and that's kind of what's scary about this particular time that we're in. Some of this stuff, there aren't laws for it specifically yet to be enforced or to punish people that are taking, like, there's some horror stories out there. People can pull images off of social media, manipulate them to look extremely real. And I think what you're asking, though, is could that happen accidentally? Maybe. But the bigger problem is that people are doing this deliberately. Allison asks, what do you think content marketing will look like with the use of AI generated text and articles? Well, we're already starting to see that. My big thing with content marketing is that we need people to use their unique voice in their articles, and their personal brand is really important more than ever, because all of these content articles are so easy to generate now. If they're just information, they're just going to be published to the internet. And that's what's happening, is the internet's being flooded with all of these information articles. But at the same time, our personal brand, our unique voice, our sense of humor, our lived experience, our unique perspective on any topic, our opinions, all of those things become even more important, because people are hungry to connect with people. They don't just want information. Content marketing is going to have to be infused with personal brand and really getting to know the author and who that person is as a human being, because gone are the days where just an information article was enough to get you the SEO rankings, to, you know, that, I mean, SEO and organic search, that's being upended right now, because less people are turning to search engines as they're realizing the user experience on these chat apps can often be better. When you're querying a chat GPT app, for example, and you get back the information you were looking for without the ads, that's going to make you more likely to turn to a chat app. So content marketing used to be geared very heavily towards the goal of search engine optimization. Well, all of that's kind of being reworked right now as we see what how people's behavior online changes. Let's see what else. Yes, Kim says, use AI for the bones, you add the flesh. Yeah. So I personally don't like to use ChatGPT for my first draft. I like my first draft to be from my brain, and then use ChatGPT to help with grammar, spelling, summarization, brainstorming, those types of things. That's how I approach it. But it's going to be up to each organization as to how they use it. Each individual has how they use it. Any other questions? Check the Q&A. Ray says, can you say again what AI you were using to do the spoken presentation feedback? That was in PowerPoint. I was actually using PowerPoint, the browser version, in my Edge browser. I don't know if it's probably also in the desktop app, but I happen to be in the Edge browser. And yeah, you can use that to get some coaching. Take it with a grain of salt, of course. It is an AI giving you the feedback. So any other questions? I will keep an eye out for that. Let's see how we're doing on time. Still have a few minutes. So we do have some upcoming webinars that are going to dive even deeper into prompt engineering. The next one is with Chris Knotts on the 17th. He's going to be talking exclusively about GPT models and prompt engineering. And then he's going to be back on the 31st talking about leveraging generative AI in project management and overviewing specific use cases, which is going to be awesome. Really looking forward to that. And then we've got Valentine's Day is the private large language model one that I mentioned. So if you're looking for a more secure way to use generative AI and interested in implementing private LLMs for your in-house solutions, join us on Valentine's Day for that webinar. So we're doing 2 or 3 webinars a month. You do get an hour of credit, so you can earn a PDU or a CDU when you attend live. And we're going to be continuing to do this throughout the year. Here's a snapshot of some of the ones beyond that. The registration's not quite live yet, but we do have one about the legal and compliance coming up in February. We just started talking about that a little bit here, but we'll be diving more deeply into that topic. And then we'll have a number of other webinars too about Agile and the topics that we tend to talk about, business analysts, and kind of a lot of these webinars, even if they're not specifically about AI, we might be mentioning AI as a tool as you're learning all of these interesting topics related to portfolio management, agile transformation, digital transformation, those types of things. And we do have a special offer for the webinar attendees here today. If you're interested in AI for business analysis, we have a course coming up January 30th through February 1st with Mark Balser. You can buy a seat and get 1 seat free. It's a 3 sessions of 4.5 hours, and you can earn 14 PDUs. So definitely check that out. Send us an email if you're interested in that. We'll be honoring that for just these dates, the 30th through February 1st. So that's all I've got for you guys today. If there's any other questions, I'm happy to stick around. If anyone else has questions, pop them in the chat. Otherwise, happy to connect on LinkedIn. Happy to, you can reach out to me via email. My email is Lara, LARAH @softdead.com. Happy to answer any questions there as well. But thank you all so much for your time and your attention. I hope this was helpful. I'm always open to feedback, so if you have questions, comments, concerns, please reach out either on LinkedIn or via email. Hope you have a great day. Bye, everyone. Oh, PDU info. So I will send out an email after this recording processes. It'll include the slides. It'll include the information about how to redeem your PDU, and it will include the, so look out for that over days. Bye, everyone.